I'm alive. I had something to do with it. And I'm telling you people that it's not supposed to be even encashed at all. You are not supposed to have it done that way. That's why it is annual leave, not 1,000 years leave. It's not supposed to be so. If you're speaking to me now, if you collapse and die in your studio there, won't they bring somebody to do your job? In the next 5 minutes, they'll bring somebody. They'll just carry you to some articulator and send you away, and bring somebody to do your job. So go on leave. Everybody must go on leave annually. That's why we have HR people preparing leave roster in concert with other heads of departments, and they just concerned. They give their own dates. The variation will be done because there is a flexibility in managing people side of any business. So clearly, if we take out the partisan politics of it away, the truism of it is that leave is something that you must take to go and rest, have time with your wife and children, and energize yourself and return to work. That's what is intended to achieve.
Right. Now, the Executive Secretary to the President, who has been writing to Mr. Domelevo, quotes a precedent, a court case, Samuel M.K. Adra versus Electricity Company of Ghana. He leans on this case to make the argument that annual leave can be accrued. In addition to making the point from the labor law about not being able to relinquish it, he then comes to this and says this is a precedent that suggests that annual leave can be accrued, because this was an entire case about an employee who was asked to proceed on annual leave, about 200 and something odd days of annual leave, and there were certain entitlements that were to go with it. The annual leave was curtailed at a point because they made him redundant, and he went to court to argue that he was owed this leave and all of the accruing benefits. The court upheld that. Justice Jamefe wrote the ruling. Does this not then create a precedent that annual leave can indeed be carried from one year to the next?
Well, I've seen judges, apex courts judge cases and later change their mind that the ruling wasn't good. That's the reason why, in the first place, labor-related matters should not even go to any court, because that judge sitting there is not an expert in managing people. He's not an expert in managing industrial relations. That's why we set up a National Labour Commission, which is supposed to be driven by people who are experts. We are doing the wrong thing, and we are quoting another law that has created a problem in the first place. What about the first one that was quoted, that the late Atamels gave accumulated leave to somebody? Was it right? Error means error. Error carried over into today means error. It's a repetition of error. Let's not do this to ourselves. Let's not do it to ourselves. What is all this? Are we not in a country that we can ask from? By the grace of God, some of us have gone through this meal for many years now. So what is about quoting some law, quoting some judgment, and so what? If it's wrong, it's wrong.
Right. I thought it was, law that makes things right or wrong. Particularly because we are a country of laws, right? They quote the rule of law as one of the bases for asking the Auditor General to go on leave. And let me quote to you the Public Service Commission policy as well on accrual of annual leave. It says, and I quote, "There shall be no accrual of annual leave beyond 2 years, including the current year, for public service employees, both in management and staff positions." So it seems that Public Service Commission observes or acknowledges that you can accrue annual leave up to 2 years.
What they are saying here is, in fact, you see, let me restate in the first place. I say, if we make a mistake and we want to carry that mistake over, then it's up to us to understand that we are living in error. That is one. Two. Now, if you don't go on leave, let's say this year, 2020, and you took the leave, let's say 20 December, or let's say December this year, into the following year, and you want to either continue, it may look like you have done more than it's about 2 years almost. Now you will see the pains at which the Public Services Commission was to say that you cannot even take the leave more than 2 years. That even makes some, I wouldn't call it makes sense, but it is because of the exigencies of the job that one does and the role one plays. If you are unable to take the leave because of the exigencies of the job and you are to take it the following year, that makes it 2 years leave. That is the reason why they said what they said. But in the true sense of it, they said it from the beginning, you are not supposed to accrue leave. But if you are to accrue not more than 2 years, this year 2020, you add it to the 2021, that will make it not more than two months, because it's about 30 days or so. Then you make 2 months, you can go and come. But if you are to accrue leave 130 days leave, then you are not even important. If you can go and stay away for 130 days and return, then we will find someone else to do the job.
That's interesting.
We are simply not managing the leave matter well. Leave roster is supposed to be done by November, December every year. Then affirmed up before the year ends, and that becomes the master leave roster to be religiously applied through the Office of the Human Resource Management, not legal people. We don't need to make law legal, labor relations matter legalistic. It's not supposed to be so. It is industrial relations. It's a relationship matter. Right. The language is different. The language of people management is different from being legalistic. That's why you do it in the courtroom. This one is people to people.
I think I'm also bound to mention that in that ruling that we were discussing, Justice Jamefe, he also said something very important that we can't do without. Justice Jamefe also found, and I want to read the quote, so I'm scrolling up to find it. Here we are. In his judgment, he said, and I quote, "The trial court held that where in a collective agreement there are express provisions with respect to the terms and conditions for termination of the contract of employment which are more beneficial to the worker than the statutory provisions of the Labour Act, then the former prevails." In simple terms, if there is a collective agreement which says something different than the Labour Act, and that different thing is better for the employee than what the Labour Act says, then the collective agreement prevails. So it sounds like the judge is kind of agreeing with you, Mr. Gami, that it is the Labour agreements that matter far more than the law that has been passed to govern Labour. So if there is a collective agreement, that should supersede anything that is in the Labour law.
Maybe to make it even more clearer, if the judge has quoted what he quoted, I would have walked to his house now and go and look for him and ask him to go and change that part. Now, listen carefully. I don't need to open the law to tell you where it is. Section 19 of the Labour Act and Section 1054 of the Labour Act is where the judge quoted from in the law to make that argument he made. Now, that is a very reasoned judgment, and I support him 100%. And it's not only limited to collective agreement, any form of condition of service, other than the law itself. That's why the flexibility in the law cannot be disputed. So here you are in the HR condition manual or master roster or related matters, or in the condition of service or the collective agreement, it is expressly provided for that we are to take annual leave for the purpose of the people taking good rest, health reason wise. And then you, the employer or government, as the case may be, you are saying that you are giving me accumulated leave. What is related to me under my condition of service is that I must take annual leave, not accumulated leave. Look, it's a wrong thing they are doing. I'm not dealing with personalities. It's an error that is being perpetuated. And then we allow it to stand. It's wrong. Somebody to come and quote tomorrow that so said that so I'm quoting it. Error means error. Period.
Okay. Now we're also joined all the way from the United States by Professor Kweku Asare. He's a lawyer, and he's also been commenting quite a bit on this matter. Professor Asare, thank you very much for your time with us. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. It's a pleasure to speak to you today. Prof, this thing is...
Thanks for reaching out.
Indeed. Prof, this thing has got us all scratching our heads. And I want us to take another aspect of this, okay? And this is the debate around whether or not the president or the board should be the ones to ask the Auditor General to go on leave. Well, let's put aside whether the leave should be accumulated or not. Who has the power to ask the Auditor General to go on leave, the president or the board?
Neither of them. Let's be clear when we talk about the board, what we mean by the board. There are three things there in the Constitution pertaining to the audits. We have Article 187, which talks about the Auditor General and the Office of the Auditor General. That's one thing. Okay, so the Auditor General and the Office of the Auditor General. The second one is 188. 188 talks about the board, the Audit Service Board. But that Audit Service Board is not the board of the Office of the Auditor General. It's the board of the Audit Service that is described in 189. So the board there, they have no authority whatsoever on the Auditor General or the Office of the Auditor General. In fact, it will be extremely unwise for the board to have any control over the Auditor General, in the sense that the board, about 70% of the members of the board of the Audit Service are appointed by the president. And the Auditor General is responsible for auditing the executive, which includes the presidency and other related agencies. So it would have made no economic or financial sense to impose a board whose membership is dominated by people appointed by the president to exercise oversight over the Auditor General, or for that matter, the Office of the Auditor General. So let's be very clear when we talk of the board. We are not talking about the board of the Office of the Auditor General. We are talking about the board of the Audit Service. Now, if you look at the Constitution, perhaps one of the most important, if not the most important office, is the Office of the Auditor General, or the Auditor General himself. Because he is the only person who is assigned a function. You know, we have Shraj, but it's the commissioner plus other people. We have the Electoral Commission, is the chairman plus other people. But in the case of the Auditor General, it's just that one person is given the power to audit the presidency and all other public services. He's the sui generis watchdog, just him. And then they created an office for him. He can staff that office any way he wants. And then they gave him an instrument that he can use in the performance of the audit. That instrument is the Audit Service. So sometimes he sits on the board of the Audit Service, but his job is to audit, and he uses the Audit Service. And so once you understand that arrangement, then it is also easy to understand why Article 187 also says, in the discharge of his functions, The Auditor General is not subject to the direction or control of anyone. Not the president, not the board, not parliament. Nobody really has any control or can direct the Auditor General.
But is that even right for the purpose of accountability? Right. We may be happy with the Auditor General we have today, but what if somebody with nefarious intentions becomes Auditor General tomorrow? Should that person not be subject to control?
No, the fact that you cannot control him or direct him doesn't mean he's not accountable. Okay, so those are two different things. He's still accountable, because if you would recall, it wasn't too long ago that I think somebody held him for contempt or something. So he's accountable through the court processes, and in the extreme case, he can be removed, like the chairman of the EC was removed. But under Article 146, there's a specific procedure for removing him when he has done some things that we think are way unacceptable. But outside that process, Article 146, and outside other accountability institutions, like taking him to court for something. So, for instance, if he surcharges you, you can appeal that surcharge at the High Court. So he's accountable. Being accountable and not subject to direction and control are two different things. When he's doing his job, the Constitution doesn't want anyone, especially anyone in the executive, to exercise any direction or control on him. Because if you have an auditor, that the person that the auditor audits has control or can direct him, the audit function is no good at all. Now,
yes, it is. I think you've clarified your response there. Now, I want to bring another thing into the mix. You see, all through this, and especially when Mr. Domelevo wrote back to the presidency, he talked about this deal with Kroll Associates, which has become the subject of some scrutiny. He asked or raised the question of whether that might be playing a role in this whole saga. Now, Gabi Asariocho has put out a post that is raising a certain specific question that I would like to hear your take on. Now, his post is quite long. I can't read the whole thing. It starts off with a rather imperial sort of address where he says, may one have one's take on the Auditor General matter. Very interesting. But then he goes to make the point that Kroll Associates is a company that was employed by the presidency, in this case, the senior minister's office, to undertake auditing work, to help them determine whether there has been, any wrongdoing by previous government officials, so that they could prosecute them. He suggests that some of their work has led to prosecutions that are ongoing right now, including the Cocoa Board one with the former Cocoa Board boss. But then he says something which I want to quote to you. He says, and I quote, "To reiterate, you may ask, should the Auditor General rather not see the work of Kroll as complementary to his constitutional efforts and be cooperating with them, or vice versa? This is what is unfortunate about this whole saga. Why is he instead accusing Kroll of being paid for allegedly no work done when there is already some evidence in court about the fruits of their labor? Is there a case of power play going on here that we are not ready to see, or is it suggested that the president erred in engaging independent investigators and auditors? Is this where the AG's focus ought to be, or has the AG seen something he is not sharing?" Prof, I want to ask you whether it is constitutional for the president, in spite of having an Auditor General, to recruit a private company to audit state institutions for the purpose of prosecutions, and for that private company to not share their information with the Auditor General unless in the presence of a judge.
Look, I don't have the details of the Kroll arrangements and what the Auditor General has agreed to and has not agreed to. So it's conceivable that the Auditor General does not object to Kroll or other forensic auditors performing forensic functions, sometimes for the state. And sometimes the Auditor General itself can hire independent auditors or other audit agencies to perform some functions for them. So that is not such a big issue that the state agency or some state agencies contract with a private audit entity to do some work. But it has to be done in consultation with the Auditor General. Secondly, once the work is done, or once you have contracted these foreign or private audit entities, the amount that you pay them is auditable by the Auditor General. It is entirely within his remit to say that, hey, you are paying these guys X amount of dollars, and I want evidence that they are providing you with X amount of services consistent with how much you are paying them. That shouldn't be a problem at all. I don't know why it is so difficult for Crow, or for that matter, any other person performing any job for the state, to provide evidence to the Auditor General that they have done the work that they are being paid for. That should be an easy thing. That should not take this much time. It's unfortunate that it's taking this much time. And I've read a little bit about it, but not enough to be able to know what is going on. To know that at some point in time, the Crow people were able to say that it's because of national security reasons, they cannot share the work that they've done with the Auditor General. I was surprised. I'm like, here comes this foreign firm to do work in Ghana, and they have the audacity to tell the Auditor General of the country that the work that they are doing is related to national security, so they can't share it with the Auditor General. This can only happen in Ghana. Can you imagine a Ghanaian company going outside Ghana to go audit some institution, government institution, and the Auditor General of the country, constitutionally mandated to audit the public purse, says, hey, I want to see your work to determine whether you are entitled to what you are being paid. And the Ghanaian company in the United States or UK or Kenya, they say to the Kenyan Auditor General, the work that I'm doing is of security interest, and so I'm not going to show you. That should never happen one day. That shouldn't happen. It's completely unacceptable, and it completely demeans our own institutions and our own constitution and our own Auditor General. Crows must share the work that they have done, and I've also seen something signed by the acting Auditor General to the effect that he has examined the work done by Crow or something to that effect.
Right. I
want to again emphasize that any work done by the acting Auditor General is unconstitutional. There is no section. Read the Constitution and tell me where you find something called an acting Auditor General. There's no such thing as an acting Auditor General.
That's interesting.
How can you have a substantive Auditor General and an acting Auditor General? The Constitution provides for one Auditor General at any point in time. So the notion that you have an Auditor General, substantive, and an acting Auditor General is repulsive to the Constitution.
Well, Prof,
I hope
that's interesting. I want you to stay with us because we've just been joined by the Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Godfred Dame. He has something he wants to share, and I'd love for you to hear it. Mr. Dame, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Right. Good morning, Kuru. Good morning to Professor Asari.
Right. Now, we're very happy to have you on the line. It appears that you have something you want to share about what Professor Asari has stated.
Sure. I mean that without regard to any of the personalities in issue, the Auditor General or the person preparing the Office of Auditor General, the nature of the Office of Auditor General must be clearly identified and dealt with. And I think that some aspects of the contribution by Professor Asari actually misrepresented the character of the Office of Auditor General. He made the point quite interestingly that the Auditor General has the capacity to hire his own staff outside and independent of that of the audit service. That the Auditor General is not accountable to anybody at all. He is not accountable to the president. He is not accountable to the board of the audit service. And I think that these impressions must be corrected. First and foremost, we have to take account of the fact of where the Auditor General has been placed in the Constitution. If you look at the Constitution carefully, the Auditor General is placed under the finances of the state, chapter 13. Now, the whole of the finances of the state set out in chapter 30. The chief administrator of that chapter is actually the Minister for Finance. And of course, together with Parliament and certain regulatory mechanisms placed there, especially which are supposed to be exercised by Parliament. Now, if you look at the finances of the state, after the Constitution has spoken about how the budget should be prepared, authorization for expenditure, the granting of a loan, procedures in Article 181, then other institutions mentioned there are the central bank. The central bank is supposed to, among other things, be the sole custodian of state funds, of public funds, and it's supposed to also encourage and promote economic development of the nation. So it works hand in hand with the Minister for Finance. Very interestingly, you see that the next institution, the Statistical Service. The Statistical Service is headed by the government statistician, who is appointed in no way different from the Auditor General. So in my view, the Auditor General is the government statistician are appointed in the same manner by the President in consultation with the Council of State. Now that office also part of the public services of Ghana. That is the Statistical Service, and is also responsible for supervision of the Statistical Service. The government statistician, the supervision of the Statistical Service Board, is responsible for the collection of official economic data into assist the Minister of Finance in all the functions that he has. Then after the Statistical Service, you realize that the next institution is the Auditor General, Article 187. So whereas the Statistical Service is in Article 185 as well as Article 186, the next one will be the Auditor General. And the Auditor General is appointed in the same way as the Statistical Service, the government statistician, I'm sorry. And they are all part of public service of government. Now, it is important to note that the Supreme Court itself has already clearly determined the status of the Auditor General. In the case of appeal for Rivers Attorney General, which is reported in 2010, the Supreme Court of Ghana report. In that ruling, the Supreme Court affirmed the point that the Auditor General is no different from a normal public servant or a normal public service office holder. So the Auditor General occupies an office which is part of the public service of Ghana. And indeed, he is supposed to retire at the age of 60 years. Now, I made this point to show that clearly the impression that is being bandied about that the Auditor General is different from all classes of public service office holders, and that he occupies a position whose independence is even higher than that of Parliament cannot be correct at all. Now, we look at what has been characterized as independence of Auditor General. What does it say? It says that in the performance of his functions under the Constitution, or in that law, the Auditor General shall not be subject to direction or control of any other person or authority. So clearly, it's a functional independence of the Auditor General that the Constitution anticipates. And the functional independence is with regards to how the Auditor General conducts his process of auditing. So one cannot compel the Auditor General to audit A institution or not to audit B institution. That is fairly within the control or the direction as to be determined by the Auditor General. But indeed, when it comes to the real character or nature of his office, he's a regular public service office holder who retires at the age of 60 years, in spite of the fact that he is supposed to be removed only in accordance with the procedure reserved for a Superior Court of Justice of Superior Court of Judicature. If you look at Article 146, there's a procedure for removal of Justice of the Superior Court of Judicature, and that by the Constitution also applies to Auditor General. Yet the Supreme Court stated in the appeal for matter that that is not sufficient to make the Auditor General subject to the same terms and conditions of service as a Superior Court of Judicature. No, it has a retire of 70 years and more. Now, when the person is stated that its independence is even higher than that of Parliament and the judiciary. It's very unfortunate. If you look at the independence of the judiciary, which is set out in Article 127, Article 127, clause 1. Now, it goes far beyond, it takes it far beyond the kind of independence that has been given to the Auditor General. And you see a clear difference in it. The formation of the judicial independence is in these terms. In the exercise of the judicial power of Ghana, the judiciary in both its judicial and administrative functions, including financial administration, is subject only to this constitution and shall not be subject to control or direction of any person or authority. It is actually only the part here not subject to the control or direction of any person or authority, which is in that of the Auditor General. It's only that part of the independence, that is the functional independence here, which has been given to the Auditor General. But in terms of judiciary, there is complete independence, complete autonomy in both its judicial and administrative functions. So you see a clear difference there. Now, to address the point about the Auditor General not being subject to his board, and that he has the power to appoint any person at all. He has the power to more or less employ his own personnel independent of that audit service. That is clearly a big fallacy. Apart from being a big fallacy, it is most misleading and does not do justice at all to the matter on hand. Article 188 clearly renders that a lie. It says clearly at 189, clause 2. It said the appointment of officers and other employees in the audit service, other than the Auditor General, shall be made by the Audit Service Board, acting in consultation with the Public Service Commission. So you see here that all the officers of the Audit Service are to be appointed by the Audit Service Board, apart from the Auditor General. All the officers of the Audit Service are supposed to be appointed by the Audit Service Board, acting in consultation with the Public Service Commission. That is just in the manner in which all public servants are appointed. So where lies the basis for someone to contend that the Auditor General has capacity to appoint his own personnel outside and independent of that audit service? It cannot be at all. And we must not, with all respect, create this impression. So the point is that the Auditor General is appointed separately. That's by the President in consultation with the Council of State. But all other officers of the audit service are appointed by the Audit Service Board. And then interestingly, you look at Section 4 of Act 584, that's the Audit Service Act. One major function of the board is to ensure that the auditing activities of the audit service, as spelled out in this act, are carried out in accordance with the best international practices. The board shall, that is B, I'm jumping A, but what is important to me is B here, to ensure that the auditing activities of the audit service, as spelled out in this act, are carried out according to best international practices. So if we look at this provision, then when an Auditor General takes a position that he is not even subject to the board, and that even when he's going on leave, he can appoint someone to act, which is correct, but that person who is acting should not go on and serve for the board, or should not even attend board meetings. So it's ridiculous. Right. I do not understand how we can have this kind of, with all respect, practice which really sounds in poor corporate culture. That's really a mark of poor corporate culture, to say that where the Constitution has said that your governing board has the power to appoint staff for you, and has also the power to ensure that your auditing activities are carried out in accordance with best international practices. You will say that you are not subject to the board. You cannot, you have the power to determine who represents you on the board when you are not there. How can you, with all respect, appoint a person to act in your capacity when you are not there? The person performs all functions, but then you say that that person should not represent you on the board, the governing board. I think that really something went wrong somewhere, and then it cannot be. And of course, we all know that, yes, leave, if you may leave and all that, is wrongful. So the question that must be asked, that how can the person who is really responsible for ensuring, as we all have come to understand and agree, that the funds, public funds of state, are kept for, and it's also a major instrument in the fight against corruption and all. How can such a person, the same person, also refuse to take his leave? and then say that other public officers are doing the same and all that. I think that higher standards are expected.
Right.
And I thought that this point is not up to it.
Thank you for that. I wonder if I may ask, so you're contending that the Auditor General actually ought to be subject to the administrative authority of the Audit Service Board. Is that correct?
What I would say is that the Constitution, number one, across the Audit Service Board functions. Article 189 clause 2 says the Audit Service Board, apart from other functions that have also been given by the Audit Service Act at 584, says that the Audit Service Board is responsible for the appointment of officers and other employees in the audit service. That is one. And also responsible for determining the terms and conditions of service officers and employees in the audit service. And that shall also, by constitutional instrument, make regulations for the effective and efficient administration of the audit service. And I'm saying that it's this same audit service that Auditor General relies on for the performance of his functions. And that it cannot be correct that the Auditor General, who relies on the audit service for his functions, can independently employ his own personnel, as is being contended by Professor Sari. I think that with all respect, that is wrong. Because the Constitution, both the Constitution as well as the Audit Service Act, have stated clearly that the Audit Service Board, which is responsible for recruiting officers who serve in the audit service.
Right. Okay.
Again, the Constitution also said that the Act 584, has stated clearly that Audit Service Board is responsible for ensuring that audit service, the activities of audit service, are carried out in accordance with best international practice. Okay. So I don't think there is any controversy. I think that perhaps we are making too much of the functional independence of the Auditor General. As the Englishman would say, he has taken his independence too seriously. The independence, as far as I'm concerned, is related to the execution of his functions, and that ought to be the same. It definitely cannot be the Auditor General, as has been contended by some people, has greater independence than the judiciary. How? How can that be possible? It's not possible at all. And I'm saying that when people also liken the action that was taken last week to a situation where the president will in future call for a judge to go on leave, it's not true. It cannot be at all. The president does not have the power to require that a justice in the Superior Court of Judicature or a member of the judicial service should go on leave, because that is different. And you see that the Constitution has actually preserved a separate chapter for the judiciary. That is chapter 11. And in terms of independence accorded the judiciary there, it goes far beyond that of the Auditor General. And again, there's a separate chapter for Parliament. That's chapter 10. So it tells you different. I'm saying that indeed where you are placed in the Constitution determines how you are supposed to be regarded. And the Auditor General has been placed under finances just after the government transition. So really, in terms of the nature, true character, and nature of the office of the Auditor General, it's actually no different from that of the audit and the statistical service, the government transition. Right. The only point here is that there's a further guarantee of independence and performance of its functions. That is all. And the Supreme Court has said way back 2010 in the appeal for matter that the Auditor General is a regular public service office holder who is under the same terms of the public service. Forgive
my interruption, but you've actually made these points already. I'm asking a different question now. I'm asking whether the Auditor General is subject to the administrative authority of the Audit Service Board.
Yes, there's nothing to add to that. That's what's so, and I would think so. In the spirit of good governance, I wonder how a governing board of any entity at all cannot be said to have any form of administrative control over the CEO, essentially. The CEO, the head of the service is the CEO, the administrative head is the CEO. So how can the governing board not have any control over the CEO? But I think that in this matter, it's also pertinent to draw attention that there's a case pending in the Supreme Court, which deals with the relation between the Audit Service Board and the Auditor General. So we may perhaps reserve further comments on it.
That is fair. I'm just wondering though, by writing to the Auditor General and asking him to proceed on leave, is the President not acknowledging that the Audit Service Board doesn't have that authority over him? If they did, why would the President have to be the one asking him to go on leave? Why not the board?
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's good. But if the President can direct any I think the question first was whether the president can direct any public service office holder, any regular public service office holder, to go on leave. And I think the president can. All regular public service office holders, persons who work in the public service regularly, yes, the president can direct one because he is actually the appointed authority. That is one. Secondly, the president also cites another reason, that is strain in the relationship between the Audit Service Board and the Auditor General. Am I not correct? I think that's also cited. And I think that, as I said, that's why I took my time to actually explain the relationship which in law ought to be between the Auditor General and his governing board. Right. I'm saying that even that straining relationship is actually unwarranted, with all respect. I think that, yes, his independence is the constitution, but that's actually in the performance of his functions. But he cannot, with all respect to him, and very good friend of mine, we consult each other on many other issues and all. I mean, misconstrue that independence to be not subject to anybody at all in the country. That's actually the height of unaccountability.
Let me ask about the instruction from the president on who should act in the Auditor General's stead. Should it be the president that decides that, or the Auditor General?
Well, I stand for correction, but I think that it's actually the person was next in line. I mean, if really you go and leave and one's supposed to act, usually it's supposed to be, unless there's another compelling reason. I think it must be the person next in line. So I think it was the next senior, the person who was next senior.
But who should make that determination? Should the Auditor General not reserve the right to pick whomever he deems capable within the allowances of law to replace him?
Well, I do not find it inappropriate. I mean, the president is not inappropriate at all. If the president first and foremost has the power to compel him to take his leave and has exercised that power, I think that it is not inappropriate to also suggest to him that he should hand over the tools of office to the person next in line.
Right. Right. So let's assume that the Auditor General decided, no, I'm not going to go on leave. Could the president fire him for that?
Well, the president, first of all, cannot fire or dismiss an Auditor General. Simply that. No. There must be recourse to Article 146. So if there's such an action, and clearly it sounds in indiscipline, with all respect, there must be a petition in accordance with Article 146. In the absence of that, the president cannot dismiss.
Right. Now, I suppose the other question now is this issue of ordering someone to go on leave, which is a general practice. We've seen it happen several times. But Article 24(2) of the Constitution says that leave is a right. It says, and I'm quoting here, every worker shall be assured of rest, leisure, and reasonable limitation of working hours and periods of holidays with pay, as well as remuneration for public holidays. And then Section 20 of the Labour Act also recognizes it as a right. It says, again I'm quoting, in any undertaking, every worker is entitled to not less than 15 working days leave with full pay in any calendar year of continuous service. So is it really the case that Section 31 of that same Labour Act converts what is a constitutional right, which the beneficiary may choose to enjoy or not, because it's a right, into a mandatory obligation?
Yes, I mean every worker is required to go on leave. So the true question here is why a person will choose to remain at post for about 4 years without taking leave, as far as I'm concerned. I think that it's unhealthy, it is not in accord with proper corporate governance, because indeed, after you take leave, it affords an opportunity for the employer to actually assess even the kind of work that you're doing and all that. I mean, so I think that the question here is why a person highly paid as Auditor General, who most of the time talks about the failure of other public service office holders to go on leave. They stay at their post for so long, they don't really take leave and all that. Why would he also be doing the same thing?
Right. So in your mind, the right is now converted into a mandatory obligation.
But the thing is, I mean, there is a prohibition against accumulating your leave, first of all. So it tells you that you cannot.
So what's the penalty? What's the penalty for not taking your leave?
Well, there can be a directive by, it's not a penalty. I mean, there can be a directive by your employer for you to go on leave. And I think that's what has been done in this case.
Yeah, I suppose what I'm trying to understand is your point of view that it can be enforced. It's a mandatory obligation rather than a right that I can choose to take or not. So I'm trying to understand it from your point of view. So if I decide not to take my leave, which is my right,
right.
How can I be punished for it? What is the punishment in law for not taking my leave?
What I'm saying is that yes, it is looking at it in terms of punishment. Yes, I look at it from the perspective of the employer directing you to proceed on leave. The employer can direct you to proceed on leave.
Very well. I want to give Mr. Asare the opportunity to respond to what you've said. You've raised a number of issues with what he said. So if you don't mind, just stay with us so that we can hear from Mr. Asare. Thank you so much for waiting, Mr. Asare. I'm sure you have a lot on your mind.
Yeah, thanks so much. And good morning to Godfrey. Godfrey, by the way, is a very good friend of mine. As you know, he's an astute lawyer. And he's very good at creating what we call a straw man. You know, he makes a point that you have not made, and then he attacks you for the point that you've not made.
Hello?
Because I spent...
Yes, Mr. Dami, we still have you.
Right. Okay. I spent quite a lot of time explaining that the Auditor General is not subject to the direction and control of anyone, but that doesn't mean he is not accountable. I mentioned that he's accountable to Parliament because he reports to Parliament. He's accountable to the court, and I cited the example of someone who took him to court and cited him for contempt. And I also mentioned that he can be removed under Article 146. So his whole first 10 minutes of talking about the Auditor General is accountable, and I'm saying he's not accountable, it's just a made-up thing. I never said that. It is not an issue. Everyone knows that no one is above the law. Everyone knows that that's right. So to make that the cross of his argument tells you that my good friend Godfrey probably doesn't have much to say substantively. Point number 2 is this thing he calls the mode of appointment. And you see, they tend to confuse the mode of appointment because they think that once the president appoints you, then they go to Article 297 and say, well, because he's appointed you, then somehow he can direct or control you, he can discipline you, because I read in one of the releases that the president was subjecting the Auditor General to disciplinary control. And there's even a removal in Article 297, but they don't go that far. Yes, the president can appoint some people, but once you've appointed them, the Constitution sometimes gives them some protection against you, the president who appointed the parties. So, for instance, the president appoints members of the Electoral Commission, as an example. He appoints the chairman of the Electoral Commission, as an example. It will be almost unheard of for the night before the election results are to be announced by the chairman of the Electoral Commission, the president sends a directive to the chairman of the Electoral Commission, go on leave, and I'm appointing this person to be the acting chairman of the Electoral Commission. That breaks down completely the architecture that the Constitution has set up to ensure that the president is not playing games with the referees of the game. And there are a couple of referees of the game. The Electoral Commission is just one of them. The judiciary, the Supreme Court and the judiciary, that's one. The Auditor General is one, but they do different things. The Electoral Commission is responsible for election management. The Auditor General is responsible for financial accountability. And in the area of financial accountability, the Auditor General power is plenary, is complete, is total. So the notion that the president has appointed, therefore he has control over the Auditor General, and I don't know why they don't extend it to the Chief Justice and the members of the Electoral Commission and members of SHRAD, it's completely made up. The third thing that he mentions is the Apia Ofori case. The Apia Ofori case has nothing to do with the independence of the of the Auditor General. It has something to do with the retiring age, because in the Constitution there is no specific provision on the retiring age of the Auditor General, and Apia Ofori was suggesting that it should be pegged at 70, and the Supreme Court said no. If the Constitution wanted to peg it at 70, it would have. It didn't, and therefore he's a member of the public service, and so the constitutional age for public service members is 60. But since he cited the Apia Ofori case, I want to read something from the Apia Ofori case for you. This is coming from Justice Doche. He said, and all the judges, of course, agree with this because this is right. It should be noted that in view of the very important watchdog role that the Auditor General plays or is supposed to superintend in the transparent use and accountability of the public purse, any attempt to prejudice and or compromise his position by linking it to the pleasure of a sitting president is untenable. Once appointed into that position, the Auditor General must have his continued stay in office, subject only to this Constitution and no more. So if he wants to talk about Apia Ofori, let's talk about Apia Ofori, the whole picture, not some selective, irrelevant items that have nothing to do with what we are talking about. What we are talking about is not the retiring age. We are talking about the independence of the Auditor General. Then he talks about constructive, he doesn't talk about constructive removal, but I want to bring in the issue of constructive removal. Because to me, Evans, you raised an important question.
It's Kojo.
The leave is... Oh, Kojo, sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that.
Right. Common mistake.
if the leave is a right, okay, then how come somebody has to force you to enjoy the right? Common law cases, there are plenty of them from all over the world, have consistently indicated that the right is something that belongs to the worker. And the worker may enjoy it. And if he doesn't enjoy it, then the employer can do something about it by way of forcing him to forfeit it. Because here's one thing that most people don't know. Leave is a liability on the employer's balance sheet, right? Because when you work and you're entitled to something, it shows up on the balance sheet of the employer. And so most employers want to clean that liability off their books. And the liability cannot hang forever. So if you don't enjoy it, most employers worldwide will convert it to sick leave or will ask you to forfeit it or some other arrangement. But they cannot force you to take a leave. The most important thing there, though, is here is somebody who has been appointed under the Constitution to do something. And he's being told to take a 167-day leave from his job that he has been sworn in to do. Evans, no, I'll repeat that mistake.
It's all right.
This is what we lawyers call constructive removal. We will say we've removed you, but constructively we've removed you. Because if I give you a job and I say, well, go home, don't come for 167 days. 167 days, if you put it in terms of working days, that's about 8 months. So go and sit home for 8 months. Nobody should be able to tell another worker to do that. And certainly, it doesn't even make economic sense to want somebody to go and sit home for 8 months while you are paying them. Go sit home, do nothing, I'll pay you for 8 months. No good employer would do that. They only do this because it is state money. If Godfrey was running his own law firm, there's no way he's going to tell one of his workers, take an 8-month sick leave and I'll be paying you.
Right.
The other thing that I want to clarify again, because the mistake keeps coming up. Let's go to the Constitution and let's read Article 187.1. It says there shall be an Auditor General of Ghana. Okay? Whose office? He has an office. He has an office. The Auditor General has an office. His office is a public office. Then it goes on to say what the Auditor General can do. The public accounts are audited by the Auditor General. The Auditor General has to have all the documents and so on and so forth. When you read Article 187, everything there is about an Auditor General who takes an oath. There's even a special oath for an Auditor General. That is why I'm telling you that the office of the Auditor General and the Auditor General enjoy what I would call individual and institutional independence.
Right.
Then when you go to Article 188, Article 188 is just an instrument for the Auditor General because it says there shall be an audit service which shall form part of the public service of Ghana. So there's an office of the Auditor General who boss is the Auditor General. Then there is an audit service. Then when you come to 189, 189 says there is a board, but the board is the board of the audit service. It's not the board of the Auditor General or the Auditor General's office. It wouldn't have made sense to say the board is the board of the Auditor General when in Article 187, I believe, is it 7 or 8, somewhere in there, it says the Auditor General is not subject to the direction and control of anyone. This is the same thing that Justice Doche was saying. Once you appoint someone and he takes that oath, only him is accountable for his authority.
Okay, point well made, and I want to thank you very much for that. Mr. Dami, I want to wrap with you, and I have a direct question I'm hoping you can answer for us. The Auditor General is suggesting that his removal may be because of the Kroll and Associates contract that he is looking into. Is this the case?
Well, I can agree. I mean, that clearly is absurd, is very speculative and conjectural. Conjectural because the Kroll matter, that's what we court. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all imagination. The Kroll matter, as far as I know, is in court. The Supreme Court had an aspect of it about 2 weeks ago. I think the parties have been ordered to actually go back to the High Court and continue the hearing of the matter. So it is in court, and that can it is suggested that the President took this decision just to avert the court hearing of the matter. And I think that it's very important that we respect the institutions of state. We allow the court to deal with the matter. If the court rules on the matter any way that it desires, that's it. It will be final. Now, one point that has been corrected in the submissions of Professor Asare is that Justice Doche's ruling was a minority ruling. It was not agreed on by all the members of the Supreme Court, as you know.
That's right. He wrote a dissenting view.
Yeah, dissenting view, and it was the minority, and this is the decision of the court. The decision of the court is actually a ruling by Justice Atuguba, Justice Eniyeboah, Justice Bafubodi, and Justice Badebe, and Justice Rose Owusu, and all that. And it was a decision which went safely, as far as I remember. And the rule, indeed, it was this argument of Justice Doche with all respect, were rejected by majority. So how can he now come on radio and say that that's the decision that was concurring by other members of the court? It wasn't concurring at all. It was a minority ruling.
Right.
That. So the decision of the court is what was upheld by Justice Atuguba, Justice Eniyeboah, Bafubodi, Rose Owusu, and whatever, and Akoto Bafo. Yes. And then they state clearly that in spite of the Constitution requiring the Auditor to remove in accordance with procedure with Article 146. He's a regular public service office holder. So that clearly tells you that indeed this whole theory about the Auditor being a different category of public servant is erroneous, it's wrong, it's misleading and must be rejected. And I think that the public ought to be educated properly.
So how about the EC chair? How about the EC chair?
So again, it brings up the issue whether the kind of independence as according to the EC chair is institutional independence or functional independence. And I'm saying that it is institutional independence. The EC chair, the Search Commissioner, the SEC boss, together with just the Superior Court of Education, and the judiciary, they are all institutional independence.
So they can only ask to go on leave by the president?
No, definitely not. No, I don't think so at all. That's fine. I don't think so at all. And I think that it has to be distinguished from this kind of independence that we would given to Auditor General. The kind of independence given to Auditor General here is financial independence, independent performance of its function. That's where it ends. And I think it might be seen as such. And that is, otherwise it will be ridiculous to say that yes, the person has institutional independence, but at the same time he is a regular public service officer. So if you want to respect the decision of the Supreme Court, which is that the Office of Auditor General is a regular public service office, then any argument that it has institutional independence will be thrown out of the window.
So to clarify, the Auditor General has functional independence, but the other ones I'm mentioning have institutional independence. So help me understand.
And that is why the Constitution actually elaborates in Article 126 and says that the judiciary is not subject to body in the performance of its administrative or judicial functions, and that kind of thing.
So help me understand where it states
Article 127.
In the Constitution that the Auditor General can be asked to go on leave by the president. They can be administratively supervised, if you will, by the president.
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, it is also important to say that the Constitution cannot lay down in black and white every specific aspect of the operation of the public service.
So this is the president's interpretation of the Constitution.
That's why the Constitution in Article 297 grants onto specific office holders what we call implied powers. And Article 297 has those implied powers. That is, a person actually has the power to appoint a person. Article 297A, then it says the power to appoint a person to hold or to act in an office of public service. Mind you, the words are in the public service. Shall include the power to confirm appointment to exercise control over persons holding or acting in any such office and to remove the persons from office. So clearly this implied power given in the Constitution Article 297A can be relied upon by the President to take the action that he did. And I think that's what he did. And it must be respected.
Very well. I want to thank you very much for your time with us, Mr. Godfred Dame, the Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice. We really appreciate your time. I wish we could spend more of it on this issue, but we do have to move on at this point. It's a Monday morning on the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM.
Agribusiness, corporate and commercial banking, consumer finance, e-banking, and many more through our network branches across the country. Whatever the culture, whatever the dream, we grow with you. Call us today on 0302-210-210 or visit www.agricbank.com. ADB, truly agric and more.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. I'm John Mahama, the Electoral Commission of Ghana is compiling a new voter register in all parts of the country, and all Ghanaians 18 years and above are eligible to register. Whether you have previously registered or voted in an election before, you must register now to be able to vote in the December 2020 elections. The time to make a change is now. Register today to vote in December and make a difference in your life and that of your family. Your vote is your voice. To be able to vote, you must register. Register now, and let's do it for Ghana.
Experience the all-new Honda City, the ultimate versatile vehicle designed and built with your safety in mind, having best-in-class Honda CVT engine system with Econ function for a better fuel economy, stylish exterior design, modern interior design with a 7-inch touchscreen display, push-to-start button. Experience the Honda City today by visiting the Honda Place at number 59 Graphic Road, Accra, to experience the all-new Honda City and enjoy 3 years or 100,000 kilometers warranty, free registration and easy finance options. Hurry, as this is a limited offer. Call the Honda Place Ghana on 0277-558-282 or 0244-327-489 for more information, or email sales@hondaghana.com. Honda, the power of dreams.
The ban may have been lifted, but we're still staying safe with Samsung. And yes, home is where we feel safest. If your home isn't powered by Samsung, no worries. This is your chance to get your Samsung appliances in the Stay Safe with Samsung promotion. Shop safely for the best appliances at amazing discounts and win gifts too. Samsung 48 satellite.
You can't give up and die. Indeed, a new dawn has come for persons living with HIV and those suffering from TB and sexually transmitted infections. WAPCAS, in collaboration with the Ghana AIDS Commission, is shedding light on our rights so we can enjoy equal rights as captured in the Ghana AIDS Commission Act, Act 938. Rights to quality health care, non-discrimination, equal work opportunities, and education. You may call WAPCAS on 030-224-1452 or 055-6233-663 to report any act of discrimination. WAPCAS,
here for your rights.
WAPCAS and Act 938, here for life. This advert is brought to you by WAPCAS with funding from the Global Fund. Be happy.
He did this song, but after that, when Nanado said he liked Shatawale, he also said he liked Nanado. That was not an endorsement.
Was that all before the election?
Before the election. Nanado said he's a fan of Shatta. So okay. Like him.
Then Shatta is a non-political.
No, it's non-political.
Yes. Welcome back. It's 9:25, and we're playing this song because we're hearing some things. Winston, you have had your political ear to the ground all night and all morning, and you've been picking up some snippets of what is to come, haven't you?
Yes, Coach. So it looks like the search is over. The much talked about search for a running mate for the largest opposition party, the NDC. The consistent you don't have a running mate looks like it's over now, because very soon there will be an announcement on who becomes the running mate of John Dramani Mahama. Looks like a shocker, because then contrary to lots of the analysis that had been done, and as I cut my talking short, it looks like Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, former Education Minister, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast, which you and I attended.
Yes. So, and by the way, I suppose congratulations are in order, right?
Well, you could say so, but I always would wait for the official announcement.
Yes. So these are unofficial congratulations.
Congratulations to her. It looks like it is done, but 1 minute is a long time in politics. Something could change, but as I speak to you now, looks like it's Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman.
Wow.
Pepper, oh yeah, frankly, pepper.
Well. So, how have we come to this point?
Well, Coach, so the NDC has been searching for its running mate for some time now. When the whole thing started, lots of names were mentioned. We even did our own analysis. And in our analysis, as much as we had Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman's name in there, truth is we didn't give her a lot of chance. We felt that it was going to be between Dufour and Professor Kwesi Botwe. In the last minutes of the search, in the last minutes of the analysis, a few things have come up. You've asked yourself, so do I focus on the economy? And in that case, I say, well, let's go with Dr. Kwabena Dufour, also because of his clout and his economic appreciation of matters. But if I decide to go with Dr. Kwabena Dufour also, what does it mean for me? Particularly, at the time when the government is so bent on talking consistently about a banking sector crisis, which they accuse the NDC of, and they say if the NDC had done a few things, of course, there's always been that counter-accusation. But Dr. Kwabena Dufour also was going to mark a departure from the consistent central regional ticket, central regional representative on the NDC ticket. And so that in itself was also going to say the NDC was going into the NPP stronghold, the Ashanti region. And there's a man that has a lot of following within the Ashanti region. He's employed a lot of people, some of whom have lost their jobs as a result. And so naturally, he comes with some bit of a constituency and also comes with some form of a sympathy, because then you could actually be the one who says, look at me, I did all the things, I gave you jobs, but because of this government, many of you have had to go home. If you give us a chance, we know how to create jobs, because still job creation is an important thing. We've talked about the economy. I understand the economy. I've been general manager of Ghana Commercial Bank. I've headed its London branch. I have been deputy governor. I've been governor. I've been finance minister. I know what it takes when it comes to the country's economy. Elvis Ifeanyi said some time ago when it got to Pakwesi Emisafa that he wasn't a deputy governor, but he had his signature on our currency, an indication that he was better placed at the time when it comes to the economy. So Dufour would have been somebody that would come and say, this is the man. But Kojo, following what we are hearing, I'm also looking at it and asking myself, so could it also be that here you are with a government that trumpets one of its major achievements, and in its consistent request for one social intervention from the NDC, they've always talked about the free SHS as one of their flagship programs. Yeah. What a way to deal with free SHS than to come with somebody who has an appreciation of education. And so on the NPP ticket, yes, you have Dr. Babe, who's an economist. You have Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, is a lawyer. The NDC has John Mahama, is a communications person, has a very good understanding of the economy. And so if that is the case, and education is going to be a major issue going forward, I am thinking, why don't we get somebody who understands education? And if you look through the NDC, first female vice chancellor of a state university in Ghana, she became education minister. She has an understanding of that sector. She's been speaking on issues concerning education. She also comes in with being this is going to be the first time you have a female running mate of the two main political parties. In times past, in 2008, there had been lots of people who had suggested that if Akufo-Addo or Professor Mills at the time chose a female running mate, they were going to vote for them, because that would have been a departure from what we have seen. And you've seen Joe Biden making a concrete statement that he's going to select a female as well. And so if you're talking about all inclusion, and if you're talking about the fact that you want to send the right signal that you believe in women empowerment, what a way to do it. Joy997 Opoku-Agyeman.
Indeed. And it's the year for it, It's the year for the elevation of the woman, finally to the position that they deserve and have deserved all this time.
Yes, she has. I mean, Kojo. Okay, I'm not going to say this, but at the University of
I'm now interested in what you were not going to say.
I'm going to say something about your father, but I'm going to say this. But now that you're back again, he was a pro vice chancellor, and at the University of Cape Coast when I was there at the time, Nana Opoku-Agyeman was the Dean of Graduate Studies. Yes. She contested to be Pro-Vice Chancellor. She lost to Professor Haruna at the time. And once we had left, she became Vice Chancellor, the first, taking over from Professor Addo. And she did well. She did very well. I mean, those who went to the University of Cape Coast would testify to that. Yeah. And for those of us who, sat in her research method class, Ghanaian literature class, African women writers, we can understand her passion about women empowerment. We understand her passion about education. So if you look at all of these things, you think that this is somebody who really cuts it. And you see, there had been a push for the NDC to move away from the central region. Because since 1992, there's been somebody from the central region on the NDC's ticket. But you also would ask yourself, would you have somebody from a swing region with the possibility of swinging that region in your favor, and that could go a long way into helping you to win election, than to go for a candidate from your opponent's stronghold? How is that going to work for you? You ask yourself that simple question.
Yeah.
How would that work for you if you had to go for a candidate from your opponent's, backyard? So in all of this, I think that Nana brings on board a lot of dynamism to the team, and we can't wait to see how the campaign, would unfold. Kojo.
Yeah, and you've given quite a lot of background there to the career of Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. Now, just listen to this.
During my time, I remember going to thousands of schools because I wanted to see the schools in, on an ordinary day when nobody was looking. It wasn't speech day. My visit wasn't announced, and I saw many things, and they have become more visible. Even as we are faced with a pandemic now. You go to a school where there's no washroom. So you ask the teachers, okay, so what do the children do? Then they tell you, oh, they go to the bush. Then you ask her, so what education are these children getting? So those were very important. Remember those days, the boreholes, the Veronica buckets. And remember at a time when we were even threatened by Ebola. And the need became even more urgent than usual. So that is a fundamental provision that must occur. But again, when you talk about schools, you said something, and there's something too that you haven't said. The schools, yes, what you said is the place where we send children. But there are different types of schools. The issue of inequality is very, very important and very, very high. My focus or my interest has always been on the public basic schools, simply because this is where the majority of our people can afford to send their children. Anis Hafa was talking about the environment. Look at that environment. So in planning, that area should be of critical importance to us. It should be an area that we prioritize.
Great.
Children like beautiful things, I keep saying. Anis talked about the flowers. They all like beautiful things, regardless where they are coming from.
Yeah, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman speaking there quite recently, actually.
Yeah, that's in May, on 26th of May. Yeah, so you can understand.
Let me ask you this. Do you think we have just seen, potentially, at some point in our future, Ghana's first female president?
Well, so lots of things have been said. My understanding is that even in a choice of a running mate, there's always been the consideration of, do we pick somebody who's younger, who can actually take over from John Mahama if he gets the nod, because he can only serve one term, or should the NDC pick, somebody who's older and can end the term with John Mahama, so the NDC would come up with a new candidate if they win the 2020 elections. Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman is 68 years, Kojo. She turns 69 before the elections. So if you were to look at the time that Akufo-Addo became president at age 72, you would say, well, she wouldn't be bad at all to, want to become president at that stage. That's if the NDC wins the 2020 elections. And so when John Mahama